Hello and welcome to Jazz Across the Pond. Yes, another week, another interview. It's Jazz Interviewing Reimagined, a brand new and a very exciting bringing together of two great nations. It's jazz talking like you've never seen or heard it before. Sit back and watch. Tonight's going to be a good one. Let's bring on my partner in crime. So it's a warm welcome to Jazz Across the Pond from me, Roger Lee, aka the Jazz Cat.
And I'm Kevin Goolsby, and they call me Mr. G.
Ah, Mr. G, Kevin, the sunny to my share.
Well, I've got you, babe.
That was quick. I like that. Yeah, as long as it doesn't turn into a Groundhog Day, and we keep living the same day over and over again.
Well, if it's with you, Roger, I'm okay with that. We'll be fine.
Yeah, you're a buddy. Right. How about last week's show? You enjoyed it, yeah?
Well, I mean, you talk about an outstanding interview. I mean, Mr. Reza Khan, he's an incredible composing guitarist, an arranger, collaborator, producer. He's an old soul. He's humble, he's modest, and those are rare traits these days, Roger.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to watch. And I think the other word I would love to use in that analogy of him, he was a gentleman. I mean,
absolutely.
Oh, what? I mean, I just warmed him. I've played his music. I know you've played his music a long time on your radio show and my show. And he's just so humble to go with it. And the work he does for the UN nation, the rest of it, amazing life story. We could have chatted for 3 hours and still not, it was still the tip of the iceberg of his life experiences.
No doubt, no doubt. What a man.
Anyway, back to tonight, because here we are tonight. Now, I'm going to start tonight off with a question for you, Kevin. To put you on your spot. We like doing this. Okay. If I were to ask you, excluding the fact that they're obviously musicians, but if I were to ask you, what do Miles Davis, Luther Vandross, Sting, Roberta Flack, Whitney Houston, Chaka Khan, George Benson, Michael Jackson, David Sanborn, Vanessa Williams, and hundreds of other legendary artists and musicians all have in common?
Wow. Well, first of all, what an amazing list. But what do all of those artists have in common? Well, they all work with our guest, the Grammy Award-winning producer, keyboardist, composer, arranger, and synthesizer wizard, Mr. Jason Miles.
Wow. And he's literally in the waiting room waiting to join them. And we can't wait for this man. We have got so much to talk about. And we may have a few listeners, viewers who are going, Jason Miles, I tell you something, if they were to go to their CD collection and just pull out a few different CDs, they would look on the back and then go, Jason Miles, there's that name. They're in for a shock tonight, aren't they?
Yeah, we still haven't gotten over that. You and I talked about Jason's body of work is so vast. I mean, we literally could do part 1, part 2, and part 3.
Yeah, very much to try to cram this into tonight's show. But I am sure that we're going to do the best we possibly can.
Absolutely.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Jazz Across the Pond, Jazz Interviewing Reimagined, we warmly welcome to tonight's guest. Let's bring him on.
Hi, this is American jazz keyboardist, producer, composer, arranger, Jason Miles, and I'm here in New York, and you are watching me on Jazz Across the Pond with the Jazz Cat and Mr. G. I hope you enjoy it. I will do what I can to make sure you do.
So good evening, welcome along to Jazz Across the Pond, and we are so pleased, so proud and so honored to be welcoming the man. We've literally already gone through the list of artists this man has worked with, and to be talking to him, I feel we could have this interview, could go on for days and days and days. Let's get straight to it, and a warm welcome to the man himself, Mr. Jason Miles.
Hey, Jason.
Thank you. I take applause. It's okay.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today and
my pleasure.
Okay,
my
we got
pleasure.
a lot to get through. So
Sure.
here we are. So Jason Miles, I know you pride yourself on being a leader in a creative commerciality world in the different genres of music. You don't like to be typecasted into one type of music, and that is relevant when you look at your entire catalogue of music. Very quickly then, Jason Miles, born in Brooklyn, New York, and went to the Indiana State University. When jazz fusion was becoming popular in the 1970s, Jason was in New York creating innovative techniques in synthesizer programming and electronic music. Now, our researchers are pretty good. They do their homework each week. Are we correct that at a very, very young, tender age, initially you started playing the drums, and then around about 5 years old, you started to play the accordion, and then at 10 o'clock, you performed in a concert? Please elaborate on that.
Well, I never got to be the drummer. I just played it for a second. My parents wouldn't go for it. And I was 7 years old when I started on the accordion. And then about 10, I started doing some concerts. But, I have to tell you, it was the Beatles that changed everything around for me, that I didn't want to do that. Now, I wanted to be something that was relevant to the music that was being played, because the accordion, when you listen to it, was very hip, and it's in a lot of places, but it wasn't that hip back then, You were regulated to weddings or bar mitzvahs, and a lot of them there were, but that was not where my head was at. So when I was more like about 12, I switched over to piano and started doing that.
Well, one of the things I found fascinating, Jason, is that you collected a couple of dollars that your dad had given you for doing some jobs for him, and you promptly went down to the music store and bought yourself, amongst other albums, but you bought Wes Montgomery's Boss guitar, and you got blown away by the legendary Melvin Ryan on the Hammond B3 organ.
Oh yeah.
Now I love the sound of a Hammond B3, and I've featured projects by Jimmy McGriff and Jimmy Smith and Fats Waller on my jazz show, so I share that same love for a Hammond. But was Mel was he the switch that caused you to make that change to organ and keys?
No, Jimmy Smith was.
Jimmy?
But the album Got My Mojo Working was a big time record, man. You know what I mean? I just heard it and I just said, because I listened to Mel Ryan on Boss guitar, but where I was at then at 12 years old and 13 years old, and if that was that, not understanding the power of the changes and not understanding all the different chord cycles and all of this. So when I heard it, I knew that I loved it, but I didn't know how they got there. When I heard Jimmy Smith play, he got there right away. You know what I mean? But he wasn't like the guy. He was your commercial dude that knew how to really put it out there. But then my father turned me on to Groove Holmes also. And I loved Groove Holmes when I heard Misty. That was amazing to me. So, so me, because I'm a melody guy, you know what I mean? And, Wes Montgomery was playing those melodies. It was awesome, and Mel and Jimmy Cobb were behind him. That kind of got me focused on the organ trio thing a little bit,
Right. Well, Jason, over 45 years, you've contributed your talents as a gifted musician and a producer to the successes of countless superstars. We've already mentioned some of the biggest names in the business. So my question to you is, as you develop a concept, and let's use your 2006 project, Jason Miles Presents Grover with Love on the Artisan label. You pulled together 22 incredible artists, and I'm not going to name them all, but just to give our viewers an idea. You had the Brecker brothers, Ronnie Laws, George Duke, Richard Elliott, Dave Mann, Chuck Loeb, Joe Sample, Dave Koz, Gerald Albright, Everett Harp, and Steve Cole, just to mention half of them. Now, the amazing thing is you pick the songs, you write your arrangements, but how do you pick which musicians you want for a project? And how do you make the assignments when you've got so many artists and you've got songs that you want to feature?
That's a good question, man. I got to give it up. The reality is you got to be a listener. You got to know people's styles, and you have to do that. I mean, this is my life. I'm not like, oh, yeah, this is what I do. I get up, I breathe. If I breathe, I'm doing music, And what the story is that, you listen to all the players. And I knew that for that record, the kind of players that I really had to get involved. At the same point, I wasn't going to totally just go to the place that everybody thought I should go to, Exactly. And that was why I did like the, Loran's Dance with the Breckers and Joey DeFrancesco, because I have to give the audience something that says, hey, look, man, you got to stretch this thing farther than what you're thinking about. And then also not going and totally smoothing out the record.
Exactly.
Which could have definitely been really smooth, because the songs and the material speak for themselves. And when you hear a song like Wine Light, they're like, well, who's the baddest cat that could really put this across now? Because the musicians that I have on it, have to be on that same level of representation, or else the track won't carry itself. And that's when I think, oh, well, how about Gerald Albright, man? He's bad.
Yeah.
Or like I had heard Richard with Tower of Power. And I said, Richard's done a few things with me that he's really stepped up to the plate with, because I've demanded that they don't be who, that I've demanded and that's a strong word to use, that they don't go to the obvious place where they might think they might have to take their own stuff to maintain in the format and everything. I told them, man, I want to see what you got. Come on. I'm not worried about broadcast architecture not liking the track. I'm worried about the people not liking the track.
Well, with your tribute albums, though, it was let's be truthful about it. It's your arrangements, though, that really set the tone for how they approach those songs.
Well, you have to think out of the box. You can't think like, just like everybody else. Like I said, it's so easy. Somebody called me up. I forgot who it was. I keep on forgetting, but it was somebody of note who said to me, man, I'm glad you're doing this Grover thing, man. You know why? Because somebody else would definitely screw it up. And I was like, well, I want to be what Grover was. And Grover never considered himself anything more than just a real contemporary musician, whether it was straight ahead or whether it was this. And there's a reason why, like, Dexter Gordon loved Grover. And there's a reason why Kenny G studied Grover. He transcended all of that stuff. Well, that's how I feel about all of the things. I put a lot of meticulous time into figuring out. Look, there's a song that I have called that I did on the Yvonne Lins project called Love Dance. Okay, and when people heard the solo on the song Vanessa Williams sang Love Dance, they said to me, "That solo is amazing. Who is it?" And I said, "That's Dave Koz." And they were like, "Come on, man, you got to be kidding me, man." I'm going, "No, that's Dave, man." And the LA Times picked it up. But I knew that he had that kind of stuff happen, and if he wanted it to happen, so I put him in the position to make it happen.
Absolutely.
And that's what you have to do. You have to put these musicians and artists in the position so they succeed. And that's how I look at it.
Well said.
Well said. Brilliant answer, absolutely brilliant answer. Ed, very quickly, it is a trivial, Ed. I know a lot of our viewers like, but we're talking about the Hammond, the B3000 Hammond organ, and the wonderful sound. And of course, a lot of people don't realize, but the Leslie speaker, which created
absolutely
that was Doppler system, and it was generated, and it was Doppler who actually turned around and heard an ambulance come towards him and passed by. And as he heard the pitch change of the sound, that gave him the indication that was like, wow, what is it? And that's where the Larry speaker came from. And it was also to do with the Doppler system. They are
okay.
we got some sounds going on in the background here. Keep going. Right, my turn. In 1986, would you tell us more about your experience of working with the groundbreaking work on the Miles Davis album? It's the Grammy Award-winning album, Tutu, an album with the likes of George Duke, Marcus Miller, again, just to mention a few. Please tell us more about this fabulous album, and you're working with the wonderful Miles Davis.
Well, Miles Davis was the reason why I came back to New York to play music in 1974. That was my thing. Bitches Brew and Jack Johnson and those records, they were transformational albums. They transformed a generation of people into Miles and into jazz and into that. Because I always said, everybody listened to, Bitches Brew, but the baby boomers were the ones that really got into it, because you just don't go from selling like 40,000 albums to like 500,000 albums that the audience moving towards you. And so the baby boomers were starting to discover, all the kinds of jazz along with it. Well, I got this. Who else can I listen to? Well, have you ever heard of, Chick Corea? Have you ever heard of this? People were getting into it. So I came back to New York because I wanted to work with Miles. I really did. And you know what? You don't realize anything. But, there was a time when I thought it would never happen. But when it does happen and catches you by such surprise, I was ready at that point. Because the whole thing is, you have got to feel like if you're going to work with somebody like Miles, that you've got something to say and offer. Because he just doesn't want anything from anybody. He wants something that's going to go and make it so he can take his thing to the next place. He's got the ideas. He always had the ideas. He always needed people to implement the ideas, And so, when the thing came, they had been making music, and it was just the regular kind of stuff they would do. And I don't know whether it was good or bad, but the Warner Brothers was not into it. So that's when they got a hold of Marcus and George Duke. And George had a song called Backyard Ritual. It wasn't called that, but he played it for Miles and Tommy LaPuma. And they go, that's pretty close to what we're looking for. So they went and they called Marcus and they played him the track. And Marcus goes, okay, man, I got it. So that, he calls me and tells me, what are you doing tomorrow, man? Let's make some demos for Miles Davis. He's on Warner Brothers now, and Tommy LaPuma just called me. And so we go in and we do this and everything. And when we did it, I was convinced at that moment, I said, if they don't go with this, man, they're not going to get anything like this. Because what was important was, believe it or not, to bring Miles back. Miles was in the scene,
Exactly.
but he wasn't in the scene of like, he's Miles Davis, man. What is he going to come up with next? Well, he was coming up with the basically good records, but the same thing, not that groundbreaking innovation that they were looking for. And so, and so Marcus, so he said, I want to take all of that and I want to make Miles play great melodies again. He's just losing the melodic factor of the songs that he was doing. So what we basically did was we tried to create an electronic orchestra around Miles so he can react to the sounds, because these are sounds that he hadn't heard before. So all of the record was not only created around the parts, but it was created around the sounds. And when that happened, I was ready for that, because I was I was on the cutting edge with all the synth guys from in England, like Trevor Horn, and what was going on with JJ and Art of Noise and Dudley and those people. And I was paying a lot of attention to that and sampling and DJ stuff. I was listening to all that stuff because my palette was wide, because I was living in New York all the years that I did and all the music that I saw. I was never just like a jazz snob or anything like that. So going into the studio with Miles was like, I knew I had to create something, and what was it that we had to create? We didn't know what it was, but as Marcus came up with ideas for his parts, and he would tell me, I'm thinking about, I want to do something like this. You think we can do a little, kind of some weird, eerie little sound that I can build that chord off of, And okay, so we built that thing up together to get to that place. But it was a record that was groundbreaking, and it brought Miles back. That album sold 250,000 copies in 1 week in Europe. The first one came out.
Jason, the other thing is a lot of people don't realize that, speaking of Marcus Miller, at 19, he played on your unpublished, and I still don't understand why. It's a great project, Cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
And it was Marcus that literally said, I know this cat that, we need to bring in. Told Marcus that, and that was your entree. And then, of course, you had, I think, didn't Marcus tell you that you had 15 minutes to determine whether you were going to be part of the project or not?
5 minutes.
That was when you, 5 minutes, and that's when you met,
Miles.
You met, Miles
he said,
Davis.
he said, look, man, the reality, you're going to be here 5 weeks or 5 minutes. So go ahead and see what happens, And I went in there, and Miles was great. See, he had heard already, what we were doing with Tutu, because Tutu was the first track that was cut. And,
Right.
And that orchestra hit got everybody in the beginning. Whoa, man, because that was like something like we're onto something new over here,
Right,
with that,
right.
with the new sounds and the new vibe coming in. And nobody was thinking like that in jazz.
Right,
And
right.
and I always have to give it up that there were many times when we worked together, and I worked with Marcus for 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
We were very much on symmetry as to how to make something happen,
Well,
and I knew kind
Jason,
of where his head was at,
To change gears just a little bit, you've
Sure, go ahead.
also worked on 8 projects with Luther Vandross, including
Yeah.
his Grammy-winning hits Here and Now and Power of Love, Love Power. Now, obviously, Miles and Luther are both brilliant in their own right, but from such different genres. Plus, you were working with a vocalist on one hand and an instrumentalist on the other.
Mhm.
So, given your ability to embrace different genres of music, and we know you have a successful process when it comes to collaboration, how did you change your approach when you worked with these two legends, or did you?
I didn't change my approach at all. The music changed the approach. It wasn't like I went in there and said, I'm going to do this. I listened to the songs, and I listened to what they have in mind, and that's when I come up with it. And the minute somebody starts playing it, like Nat Adderley Jr. See, I was in a unique position, Am I a keyboard player? Yes. Am I a musician? Yes. But you know what, man? They needed me for what I did on my synthesizers. And it was a journey that I took, because I said that, like, for the 15 years that I spent in the studio, really, those are my 15 years, from like 1979 to about 1994, 95. And I did projects after that, but not like the way we were doing them, And,
Right.
what I was saying to myself was, how I make, the adjustment to the music. And the music that I was listening to was all different kinds. I'm listening to pop music, Falco and the Human League and ABC and, Frankie Goes to Hollywood and stuff like that, So you
Right.
absorb and you see kind of what people are doing with the technology, and you kind of see whether you're into it. And me,
Right.
all I need to do was hear the song, and I kind of knew, where we should go with it, because it was a pop direction. Luther expressed that he wanted it to be pop, and I said, okay, let's go. You put your head in a different place and you understand what you have to do. But I said, those years I dedicated myself to being a great synthesist, and I was writing music and everything, but I took that journey down that road. And when 1995 happened, the first thing, and I started going out on my own, the first thing that I said to myself was that I know all about that, man. Now I got to get myself back up to the musician that I was, because I haven't been doing that to the same extent that I was doing that, you know? And so that's what I worked on. So when people go, oh, are you doing any stuff? Yes, I still work with my synthesizers and everything, but I really spent a lot of time bringing my chops up, bringing my arrangements up, bringing all this other stuff. So because that's where I was going, you know, but you know, you hold valuable lessons with you.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting in awe. The sound you just heard, that was our smoke alarm here in England going off, and I think that's because the internet is so hot.
Oh, whoa!
Oh my God!
Carrying on. Yeah, I mean, you also did a fabulous. We're running into the time. It's just incredible. You also did a brilliant. You worked on with Marcus Miller again with the fabulous, the late great Al Jarreau, and the album Tenderness, and again an all-star lineup on that, and that is an album. Oh, so worth getting. So basically, in 2000, we're going to bring you up now to 2000, and you won a Grammy Award for production of A Love Affair, music of Ivan Lins, with the appearance of Sting, and he won the Grammy for the best male vocalist in 2000. Now, again, an all-star lineup. What an album! I mean, again, a different journey for yourself there to come up.
Yes, but it isn't though.
About this album.
It is because it goes from 1970. From the 70s on, look, and like I always loved Sergio Mendes back in the 60s and everything. But when I came back to New York in 1974, I got through knowing the Cats and Weather Report, Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter. I met the percussionist Dom Ramau, and Dom and I would hang, and he turned me on to all this amazing Brazilian music. And in 1974, I started meeting all the Brazilian guys, Milton Nascimento, Dom Salvador, Savuca, you know, when we were in the middle of that, and the Brazilian music really touched me so deeply. And so I knew about Ivan Lins and everything, you know, and you know, of course, because I was, you know, listening to him and Caetano Veloso. I mean, we listened to a lot of music, man, over my lifetime, you know. And so what happened was that, you know, I met Ivan and at a party up in Woodstock when he was making this album, My Way O. To try to cut to the chase a little bit, Miles was going to make a whole album of Ivan's songs, and produced by Quincy Jones. And Miles was talking to me one night about it and everything, right before he went to Europe in 1991. And he wanted to know if I would, you know, if I jump aboard with us. I said, man, I'd love to do it, you know? So he said, okay, we'll talk when I get back and everything. And Miles passed away. And he had a cassette tape of Ivan's that had these amazing songs on it. And I listened to the songs with him. I said, oh man, you know, Ivan's badass, man. So I ended up calling up Ivan to tell him how much Miles loved the music and everything and how really sorry I was. And I said, but you know what, man, those songs, something's got to be done with them. And I spent the next 8 years trying to get a deal for that project. 8 years I spent pitching that record to everybody, 3 times to some people, major guys, big time guys, you know, but who knew Ivan and loved him, didn't think that he can sell, but just didn't understand my concept. And my concept was to take his music, which so many people love, and put English lyrics to them, and to bring them to like the rest of the world. Because even though all the musicians love it and all the artists love it, the people can't listen to it because nobody wants to listen to, in America, I'm talking about, Portuguese lyrics, you know? So making them and getting great lyricists, you know, like Brenda Russell and my dear wife, Kathy, who's brilliant. Kathy just wrote a new Ivan Lins song, by the way. We just got done recording it.
No,
which is your scoop right now. That's your scoop that we record. The first guy to hear this, we recorded this new song. And so what happened was that, you know, I knew the people that loved Ivan. Shaka, I was at a party with Shaka one night at Ivan's apartment in LA. Yeah. And I just said, look, man, I do this project and everything. I said, hey, I'm going to see. Shaka was like, man, don't call me, man. You know where you're going to wind up, you know? Of Vanessa Williams, who just loved Ivan and told me that she's really depending on me to, if I ever do an album, to put her on it. I mean, people were wanting to be on this record because of their respect for him. And the musicians and everything I got, you know, look, I was in LA and I needed the bass on a couple of songs, man, that just were not together. I had tried a bass player in New York and he just wasn't getting it, you know, and that's a long story in itself also. But I went to LA. I went to LA and I was working on a movie and I was working on to grow on Ivan, on the Ivan project. And I just said, you know, man, screw it. I got to call Marcus. And one night, man, like a Friday night, right before we were leaving at 11 p.m., we started a session. We did a 3-hour session and we played on Nocturne and Somos Todos. and I just had to get the best. I couldn't settle for somebody that I never settle anyway. But if I can't get somebody, I know somebody else to call. I didn't want to call anybody else. I wanted him to do this for us, and he did.
Yeah, well, you certainly didn't compromise, and it is an incredible. I recommend anybody buys this album. It's one of my favorites. Brenda Russell Sting, Grove Washington Jr., Peter White, a former interview we've had him on our show with us. Diana Reeves, love Diana Reeves and that, and Chaka Khan, Freddie Cole, a lot. Right, we're going to very, very quickly, because we've got 15 minutes, we've got so much to get through. We're going to just very, very quickly break now, because apparently they've been sending space missions up to Mars, and apparently there's a few things in Mars haven't heard your name up there, because everybody on the world knows your name. So
I wish they did.
Play a track from your last album. It's called Black Magic. It's an album which I actually voted in my 2020 top 20 jazz albums of the year last year, and I did the whole thing, and I voted it in the top 20. It is a brilliant album. We're going to play the title track, ironically called Black Magic. We're going to carry on this wonderful interview. You listen to this Jazz Across the Pond. We've got the wonderful Jason Miles. Have a listen to this Black Magic. We'll be back in 2 minutes. You've been listening to the amazing, incredible. If you weren't toe tapping to that, you've got no soul. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the wonderful Black Magic by the man himself. You can see him on the screen, Mr. Jason Miles. Kevin, over to you.
Yeah, what a great track and a great project. I love the mix, Jason, of the live tracks that you recorded at New Blue in New York City. And I love the 4 studio tracks that were driven by the inspiration you received at a concert watching Herbie Hancock perform. You described the profound effect of observing the passion of Herbie in concert as follows. You said, seeing Herbie perform just made me realize how deep you have to go to get the most from your creative soul. I reevaluated the music I had, and I realized I hadn't explored my musical soul deep enough. I locked myself in my studio and came up with 4 new tracks, and I couldn't be happier with, and I decided to call the CD Black Magic. Now, if you would just share with our viewers a little bit more about that visceral reaction you had to Herbie's performance.
Well, I mean, look at how, you know, Herbie's today's his birthday, man, and we have to wish Herbie happy birthday, man. You know, today's Herbie's 81. 81,
Wow.
beautiful, beautiful. And he doesn't seem like that though. He's about as 81 as, you know, Justin Bieber is. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you know, but Herbie, you know, I'm hearing people play, and I'm hearing all these players and everything, you know, and there are players that are playing really good. There's some young cats that play good, but they're not getting in here. They're not getting in here, man. I'm sorry.
Right.
You know, technically and everything that, you know, but, you know, unless you've lived it and gone to it, you don't have the soul to understand how to put it out there. Herbie, Chick, George Duke, those guys, man, they understood, you know, what it took to really get out there. And Herbie played that night, man, and I heard stuff that I was just mind-blowing at, because when the band was playing and they were in like 3rd gear, and, you know, and they're playing and Herbie's playing, you say to yourself, I don't know where he can go with this, man. And the next thing you know, man, he shifts it into another gear, and high gear, and he starts really playing some shit. And and you say, oh my God, man. So, and then after the concert, I went up and I spoke to him, you know, and I gave him a couple of my CDs, my Sly Reimagine CD and the First Kind of New CD. And he said to me, you know, man, I was wondering what you've been up to, man. You know, I guess I see it. I'm going, Herbie's wondering what I'm up to? Whoa. Okay, you know, Chick, the same thing. It was crazy, you know. But anyway, so what happens was that, you know, I came back home, and one thing that I realized through the whole thing, through this whole process, no matter what, was that I wanted to show people that live is live and studio is studio, and that you need a different technique to play live in the studio, and you need a different technique to play concerts, because they don't go together in a way, you know. One is going to bring you to a certain place, one's going to bring you to another place. But I also wanted to show that I used the same guys on all the stuff and their ability to go and to morph into what's happening. That's the subliminal message behind the whole thing. Don't think you're a musician. Yeah, you're going to the studio and you're recording, but that's all you're doing. You're recording music.
Right.
There's a difference between recording music and making a record. We know how to make records, okay? Not everybody knows how to make a record.
Jason, if you would do one more thing for us,
Go ahead.
to share a quick story, because I know we're running tight on time, but you attended a show at the Bottom Line in 1974 with your lovely bride, Kathy, to catch the legendary pianist Horace Silver. And there was this gifted young musician on sax who not only played with Horace, but also with Miles Davis and Chick Corea. And if I remember correctly, you went, oh my God, it's Bobby.
Yeah, Bob Burke, my childhood friend.
That's unbelievable.
Well,
I'm so blown away by that.
Well, you know, Bob and I were, you know what? And I'll tell you something, man. Our relationship through our life was like very like, it's up, it's up, it's up, it's up, it's down, it's down, it's down, it's down, it's up, it's up, it's up, it's up, it's up.
Typical.
Because we had a lot of different musical differences, but at the end of the day, he saw where I was going with this thing, man. And I just give you a little tip. 2 days before he died, we were talking about him, a project that I had in mind, because he was very, very frustrated about the acceptance he was getting with his music, and he's a monster. And I said, okay, man, look, I got this idea. We're going to have a band. I'm not in the band, but I'm going to produce it. It's called Masters of Modern Jazz. And you're going to get 3 of your friends, whoever the hell you want to get. I know you're going to Gary Novak or John Patitucci and everything. You're going to go in there and you're going to be the leader of this thing. That's going to be your project, the Masters of Modern Jazz. And every couple of years, we make a new record, and then you do a tour with it, and everybody's going, Jay, I don't know how you do this stuff, man, but I really love it, you know? And, you know, we had been very connected at that point. Our friendship was stronger than ever. And believe me, it was crushing Why it was crushing? Because I look back now, and you know how many projects I would have done with Bob right now. We would have been touring together. He would have been playing with me here. All of this stuff, because I admired him and I miss him tremendously.
Well,
Little Bobby Berg, who would have thought?
Bobby Berg, exactly.
now, time is really not on our side of this one here, but
Okay.
you now celebrate your multifaceted career with a one-man show entitled The Extraordinary Journey of Jason Miles, a musical biography. The retrospective is built around the solo music performance of your playing keyboards, enhanced with a one-of-a-kind in a moment of a first-hand stories, colorful anecdotes, and a professional and personal relationships that you've had and you continue to have with music legends. Very briefly, I know you've got some wonderful stories you want to tell us. Can you elaborate on that fabulous show? Boy, when I love to be in the audience.
I sit down and I start playing music and I tell you the story, and I don't get into like my life as much. I get into like stories of what I saw. There's like 50 stories. I don't know which ones I'm going to tell when I do the show, but I feel the audience out and I know which ones to tell. Because like I did the Soul Train cruise. Well, that was heavy on Luther and heavy on Shaka, because those audience want to know that. And I've got tons of stories about everybody. And, it's up to me to put out what really happened. I want to tell people what happened and not throw anybody under the bus or anything, but let them in on the experience of what it was like to make albums and to, be a part of a situation that people couldn't imagine what it was like, sitting in a small room with people for 4 months making an album, and one of them's a superstar and the other one's a superstar producer and everything. What was the headspace like? The headspace was beautiful so many times. It was all for the same thing. We got to make a hit record here, man. Whatever it takes, we're going to do it. And that was basically the whole thread. And that's been my thread, whether it isn't. My thing is to bring the music to as many people as possible, honestly, and not making them feel like I've sold out or anything. I want them to know that everything that comes out of me is coming from here.
Right.
And and the one-man show shows it. You also, there's going to be a book accompanied with it also, and a solo piano CD. So it's the show, the book, and the solo piano CD.
Well, I know you want to tell us this. You got a great story to tell us about projects that are coming up. Do you want to expand on that, please?
Well, I've cut 2 new tracks for Black Magic to use as digital bonus tracks, because even though the record's out there and like it never got a chance to explore everything because the thing. I was supposed to be over there playing for you guys, man, this year. I was supposed to be over in London, and I did Ronnie Scott's already. The last tour was awesome, amazing. The Financial Times of London gave me a 4-star review, and we had the gigs. Everything got canceled. So I said, man, I'm going to re-energize Black Magic. And I'm gonna cut 2 new tracks for it. One of the tracks is from the New Blue thing, which is a Miles track. Well, it's about that time. And then this other tune is called 1974 that I got from my friend in Finland, Jukka Eskola. And I decided with that one to go for it. And I got Randy Brecker as a special guest on that one. So that'll hopefully be out like summertime somewhere. As soon as we see this COVID thing, I'll know that I can release it. I also did a couple of trio songs for my solo thing, because I have some great ideas for a trio, because you're going to have to start traveling small. You're not going to be able to travel big in the beginning, So I'm trying to give as much as I can out there and see. And then we just wrote this new Yvonne Lin song, we have. So, and also I do have to say one more thing about this wonderful artist, Rebecca Angel. We worked on her record for a year and we finished it. And if you think that I got some people, no, that's the EP, yes. But this album called Love Life Choices, it's got the baddest cats in it because nobody was working. And so anybody that I called said, "Oh, you kidding me, man? I want it." So I got the cats. I got serious, I got Gene Lake and Reggie Washington in the rhythm section. I got the best guitar players, the Homero Lubambo and Nir Felder and Dean Brown. I picked out the cats to play on this because they were available. And I got a chance finally to go, well, I got to wait 3 weeks for him to get up the road, or I got to wait them. Everybody was home. So we made this album. It'll be out June 11th. The new single is dropping soon, just the 2 of us, which I'll get to you guys. And we had a #1 single a few months ago with For What It's Worth. I've got a lot of faith in Rebecca. She's one of those new artists for the future that has learned her lessons well. She learned her lessons. She listened, and she got down exactly what I told her from Herbie Hancock. I put in her.
Yeah, Rebecca Angel, it's what we had in a beautiful, that is really lovely. We are literally running out of. Kevin, have you got a last question for Jason?
The only thing I wanted to point out is that, we talk about you're experiencing or re-experiencing and discovering Bob Berg when you came back to New York, but You also had another significant concert encounter where in 2014, you were at the Birdland in New York City and you heard Canadian trumpeter Ingrid Jensen.
Mhm.
And this will tie into the last track that we'll be playing tonight. After the show, you invite Ingrid to jam with your band the following night, and then the Dias cast. Tell us about your incredible 2015 project, Kind of New, with Ingrid Jensen.
Ingrid was always telling me to tell you, just telling me that she's always so tired of making other people sound so good. And I said, well, I got something that I think is going to happen, because I want to tell you something. Here it goes. I'm doing the best I can to cut to the chase. But in 1988, I was at Miles's house one day. I said, Miles, I heard Bitches Brew, and man, you had the baddest cats playing Fender Rhodes. And who's your favorite one? Zavinul, Chick, Larry Young. He goes, Keith Jarrett. I'm going, Keith Jarrett? Keith was with you, man. He played with me for a year. Well, finally in 2007, I got to hear Keith Jarrett with Miles on the Cellar Door sessions, and it blew my mind to be playing electric. And I decided we're missing the small ensembles. The small electric ensembles we're missing. And I was looking for that combination. And one night I bumped into Ingrid and I just told her about it and everything like that, And she was like, yeah, well, I think that's really cool. So I started writing music and sending it to her and seeing what she thought about it and everything. And she was into it. And so, we made this album that really got a lot of attention. Should have got more attention.
Great
But,
project.
but that's what I toured in Europe off of. And I took Theo Croker with us to Europe. And on
Another
the
great
last one, I have this.
trumpeter.
What?
Hey,
Oh, Theo's
Another great
great.
trumpeter.
I
great.
hate to interrupt this, but we're running
Okay.
there at the moment. If we were in a car,
Sure.
we'd be running and the dashboard would be lighting up. It's Ingrid Jensen, Jason Miles. It's kind of new. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening, you've been watching the man himself, Mr. Jason Miles. If you want to start buying his collection, Mr. X, brilliant album.
That's a great
Miles
album.
Miles,
That's a great
Jason Miles
album.
on tour, a brilliant album. We've already spoken about The Love Affair, Black Magic, a wonderful album.
No,
And
visit my website. Visit my website, jasonmilesmusic.com. Check me out on Facebook. I'm always looking to work with interesting people. If you're a great artist and you've got something great, and you think you can sit in the fire, then I want to know what you're doing.
Get that
You
man.
know what I mean?
Ladies and gentlemen, our thanks.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our thanks to Jason Miles. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us.
My pleasure.
Incredible.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope
Jason.
to see you over in the UK soon.
Oh, you'll make sure you'll recognize me because of my shirt. Say
Oh,
goodnight,
okay.
Kevin.
Good night, Kevin.
Good night from him. From everybody here, Jazz Across the Pond. Take care. Look after yourself. Stay safe. Jason Miles, thank you very much. We're going to finish off now with one of your great tracks now from the Ingrid Bergen, from the Ingrid Jensen collaboration. And we're going to finish off from that. From everybody here at our show, take care. Look after yourself. Jason, Kevin, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.